yummy, Chef.
Ooh, goodness, that aroma is fantastic. Ooh, that might look great. Hey everybody, I'm Vera Stewart and welcome to the VeryVera Show. You know, people always are talking about how delicious dumplings are, and they say, isn't that a Southern dish? Of course, I'm going to take full credit for anything Southern that's delicious, and dumplings would be at the top of that list. So today we're going to do 3 recipes using dumplings. We're going to start with breakfast. What about a blueberry dumpling to serve with eggs and bacon? Doesn't that sound delicious? Then we're going to do chicken and dumplings. I think that's probably the most noted use of this dish. It's a great soup. You're going to really love that one. And then finally, what about an apple dumpling that uses the whole apple? Fantastic presentation. Then in Vera's Corner today, we're going to do Flour 101. And I'm not talking about arranging flours. I'm talking about your flour that you bake and cook with. So, I don't know about you, but I'm ready to get started on this blueberry breakfast. So I've got all my ingredients measured out, and we're going to start with a blueberry. And in this particular instance, this time of year, I'm using frozen blueberries. So they're a little bit small, but you know, down here in the South, when we grow those blueberries, they are huge. Love to make my blueberry pound cake recipe using those. So I've got this on a medium heat. Just get these added in. And you know, I've done plenty of stains before with blueberries, so I'm going to be kind of extra careful today with these. All right, so those are added into a medium heat. We're going to add in granulated sugar. I've got freshly squeezed lemon juice. And then finally, lemon zest. So people also ask me, what are some of your favorite instruments in the kitchen? And this microplane, y'all, I cannot tell you how many times I use this thing. Whether it's nutmeg or orange or lemon zest, it's just so handy. And the handle is so easy to grip, so it really makes it nice to use for this sort of thing. All right, so I'm going to turn this up just a little bit to get this to come to a boil. But it's already smelling delicious. So while this is cooking, we're going to come over here and make this dumpling dough. All right, so I'm going to walk away from that. Let's bring this flour to the center. And now I'm going to add in sugar. And you know, all of these ingredients, really, except for the fruit, you probably already have in your kitchen. We're going to do baking powder and salt. And I'll just take my wire whisk and just mix those ingredients together. All right, so shortening, you're probably thinking, Vera, that's not shortening, it's yellow. Well, you know, shortening comes in a lot of different sizes and shapes and packaging, but this is shortening. And this is another tool that I use quite a bit, is a pastry blender. So the shortening is cold. And I'm just going to take this pastry blender, and if you don't have one of these, you can use a couple of knives, you can use a fork, you could actually use a wire whisk to do this. But basically what you're trying to accomplish here is getting the shortening cut into the flour so that it's kind of like coarse meal. Just making this easy for us to add the liquid to it. All right, so how are these blueberries coming over here? I'm going to turn those up just a little bit. And you know, I'm cooking today on my induction cooktop. And so honestly, you can regulate that heat in a moment's notice. One of the reasons I love to cook on my Wolf induction cooktop. All right, so this is looking pretty good. So I think now I could add my milk. So I've got a cup of milk. I'm just going to use that whole amount. So a dumpling is a little bit like a biscuit. It's going to get crisp on the outside, but it's going to be a little doughy on the inside. And I actually kind of like my biscuits like that too. But I just want to stir this together. You don't want to overmix, but you're just basically getting all of the dry ingredients mixed together. Okay, look at there. That's coming to a good boil. All right, so the dumpling size for this dish is about 1/4 of a cup. So here's 1/4 of a cup, but I think I can eyeball this with my wooden spoon to about that much. So instead of messing up another instrument, I'm just going to put these in. Look at that. So I'm going to turn this down just a little bit. And this just is so fun. So a blueberry dumpling would be a really nice, if you're doing something where the family's coming over, you got the grandchildren for the weekend, this would be a dish that they would love to watch grandmother make, or even mom, for you to maybe go back and introduce your children to an old-timey recipe. I love that. So once all of the dumplings are into the pan, then we're going to cover it, and it's going to cook for about 10 to 15 minutes until those dumplings are done. All right, so when we come back from the break, we're going to get started on the chicken and dumplings, but I honestly do not want to walk away from this pan because the aroma is fantastic. But y'all come back with me in just a few minutes. We've got more to do. Welcome back, everybody, and if you're just joining me, we're doing a show about dumplings today, and as you can see, we're finishing up with those blueberry breakfast dumplings. The blueberries are just bleeding into the dumpling dough. They just look amazing. I cannot wait to take the lid off, show you those at the end today. But now we're going to move right into the main dish, the chicken and dumplings. And I said earlier that we're kind of noted in the South for all these dumpling recipes, but it's kind of a universal recipe. We just kind of put our own twist on it in Georgia and all over the South. So the chicken and dumplings recipe you've probably seen on the menu at many of your favorite restaurants. And since nobody seems to make this at home anymore, it's kind of a treat to order it when you're out to eat. So let's walk through the steps. I had a little bit to do prior to this segment, so let's walk up through what we did earlier. So we started with my Lodge enameled cast iron Dutch oven. I love to use this pot. Works really well, things don't stick to it, so when you need to walk away, it's just perfect. It's also the right size for this particular recipe. So I put some oil in the pan. I added in my red pepper that was chopped coarse, chopped parsley, fresh parsley, then garlic that you've also chopped coarse, and then some dried basil. It's going to look like a lot, but it's the dried basil. And I cooked that for about 5 minutes until it was nice and cooked through. The peppers were a little bit tender. The garlic, the flavor had gone through. It's just aroma is fabulous, and also it's very colorful. Then we added in chicken broth. And for me, when I'm doing things quickly, if I don't have any homemade chicken broth in the freezer, I love to recommend Swanson. It's a really flavorful broth, works perfectly in this recipe. Then I added in my carrots that I peeled and then cut up. I love to buy the fresh carrots when I can. And then peas, you can either use fresh or frozen. These happen to be frozen. And you want to bring that to a boil. So once that's boiled well, you're going to turn the heat down to medium and add in your chicken. And on the chicken, I just cooked this, cut it up nice and chunky. I want it to be, a main dish, so I want to have the pieces to be, large enough for you to really see the chicken in the dish. I added in some salt and pepper to taste. And at that point, I'm going to turn the heat down to medium, cook it for about 15 to 20 minutes until the carrots are nice and tender. So basically, that's where I am right now with this dish. The carrots are tender, fork tender, and I'm ready to make the dumplings. All right, so I've got my flour in the bowl, and on the last dumpling recipe, I used shortening. In this one, I'm going to use butter, and I've cut it into pieces. And again, my pastry blender, just cutting that through. And I will tell you that when we're doing cooking camp with the children in the summer and they learn how to make biscuits and we pull out the pastry cutter, the next thing you know, the whole kitchen is covered with flour. So they're actually, as easy as this looks, there's kind of a technique to it. So you just want to push down hard and get it as coated as you can. And then maybe take your fork and get some of that butter off the blender, and then just keep going with it. So on these dumplings, you know, there's different definitions of a dumpling. Some people like them fat and, you know, crisp on the outside, gooey in the center. And some folks like them to be more like a noodle. So I'm going to show you both ways today so that you can make it more reminiscent of your favorite dish wherever you eat it out. All right, so now let's add the liquid to this. And again, I've got milk. And we just want to stir that until it's come together. All right. So this is a wonderful soup. You know, as a child, I would eat just the dumpling and not the vegetable soup part. And now I'm going to add in my baking powder and salt. And you can either do that when you add in just your dry ingredients, or you can do it right at the end. That baking powder starts acting immediately. So sometimes, all right, so now I'm going to drop this by just little teaspoons into my soup. And then this is going to get covered, and this will cook for about 20 minutes until these are done. All right, so we've got lots more to do with an apple dumpling after the break, and then we're also going to talk about Flour 101 in Vera's Corner today. So I hope I'm making you hungry. You got to come back with me. Vera's Corner is sponsored by TaxSlayer. It's your refund. Go get it. Baking is the art of turning flour into food. Today I'm going to show you the distinction in each so you can make the right choice. All-purpose flour is the most commonly used flour in home baking. With a moderate protein content, it's the most versatile of flours, able to produce pie crust, bread, cookies, and more. Self-rising flour is flour that has had baking powder and salt added during milling. Self-rising flour is generally made from low-protein wheat, traditionally grown in the South. It's best for tender biscuits, muffins, pancakes, and some cakes. Cake flour is one of the softest varieties with a very low protein content. This makes cake flour ideal for tender baked goods such as cakes, of course, but also biscuits, muffins, and scones. Bread flour is the strongest of all flours, providing the most structural support. The extra protein makes for better volume, a chewier crumb, and a browner crust. White Lily flour is not just a brand, but a specific variety of flour. It uses only soft winter wheat, which has an especially low protein content. This makes White Lily light and silky, which makes for lighter, fluffier biscuits. Next time you bake, you'll know exactly the flour to use. Welcome back, everybody, and I hope you enjoyed those tips on flour. You know, if you ever want a tip, go to our YouTube channel because we do these all the time, and you might find something helpful. All right, so we've got the dumplings all together. We finished those off. We took the big ones out, and then I rolled the other ones, as I mentioned, thin so we could cut those into squares more like a noodle. And those are now floating in the liquid and just look delicious. So that is going to be a scrumptious dish. This also freezes very well. So now let's talk apple dumplings. So I've been so busy getting all of this together today. So let me talk you through what we've already done. So we started by preheating my M-Series Wolf oven to 400, and that is just going to be the perfect even temperature to cook these on. Then I buttered my dish, and this is when, you know, the little things that you do with your grandchildren, they're going to remember one day, because my granny always took that butter out of the refrigerator and she used the wrapper to butter her pan. That was long before Pam was available. So I love to use that technique still. It makes me feel like she's in the kitchen with me. Then in the food processor, I pulsed almonds until they were very fine. I added in granulated sugar, pulsed it again. Then I've cut my butter into little cubes. I've added that and pulsed. I've added in hazelnut liqueur and brandy into this mixture that is going to be stuffed into these apples. I also put in a little bit of vanilla. So if you don't want to put alcohol in it, you can just do the vanilla. This is just a great dessert with the liquors in it. I've pulsed that until it's paste formed, and then I've gotten the apples ready. So I love to peel my apples with a knife, but I've got this dandy apple core that just went right down into the center and pulled that core right out. But to get even more of that filling into the apple, I made the hole just a little bit bigger on the top. So then you're just going to stuff the center, and I flipped the apple over to make sure I went all the way to the bottom with that filling. And then I've cut my puff pastry, and this is Pepperidge Farm. You find it in the freezer section, and I really like to roll it just a little bit thinner, so I floured my board just a little bit and cut those into 1-inch strips. And then starting at the base of your stuffed apple, you want to wrap it around almost like lattice work. You're just going round and round that apple. And then once that's done, transfer it to just a sheet pan that you can brush the pastry with an egg wash, which is a whole egg and water. And then I'm going to sprinkle it with turbinado sugar, and that's just a brown sugar that's defined, you know, really coarsely ground. It looks really pretty when it cooks. But you know, after you do that for a while, if you want it to really go quickly, you can put it in a bowl and just dip and roll the apple. It works just as well. And so now you place it into your prepared dish. You bake it for 10 minutes on the 400, then reduce that heat to 375 and bake it for another 15. All right, so that's where I am. That's what we've done right here. Don't they look pretty? So now I'm going to start on the cardamom sauce. So this is half and half. I went ahead and got my pan kind of heated up. All right, I'm going to whisk my 2 eggs, and honestly, this is going to be just about at the right temperature. All right, so now I'm going to add in my cardamom, and if you're not familiar with this spice, I'm actually going to pop these little pods open, and you get these little bitty seeds that are actually in it. So I'm going to add that in, and this is a floral citrusy flavor, which is just what makes this such a nice combination, you know, with the apple. And now when you're doing something like this, like a custard, you want to use your best vanilla. And this Nielsen Massey is just such a good brand of vanilla. I'm going to add in a teaspoon there. And then I've got my fine mesh strainer ready, because one of the things that we do is at the end you want to strain it so that you don't have those little seeds in your custard. All right, so now I'm going to go quickly so I don't cook the egg. And this is just to temper that egg before it goes back into the custard. All right, so now back on the heat and back on the pan. And this is just going to cook slow until it coats this wooden spoon. And you know, there's nothing like homemade custard. So even if you decide not to make this dish, for something else, you might want to just make this custard. It is such a good recipe. All right, so this is going to cook down until it's, you know, coating a wooden spoon, which will take just a few minutes. And on presentation, we're going to individually plate this. So this is going to be really pretty. So come back with me in just a few minutes. Well, I would say we have covered 3 different meals of the day right here. So I'm so excited with the way everything turned out. So let's quickly walk through. We started with breakfast. We did a blueberry dumpling. It's beautifully displayed in a bowl with the extra blueberries that were cooked down around it, a little whipped cream and mint. Of course, that works well with eggs and bacon, and orange juice and coffee. So it's just the perfect start to a day. All right, then how about chicken and dumplings for your main dish? And And you know, that with the salad is a meal in itself with the vegetables. And I actually preferred the rectangles or the squares more than I did the dumps. So that's the way I'm going to do it. Looks beautiful and looks great with a cup of iced tea. Is just perfect. And then finally, the apple dumpling. I think it's the star of the show. Your guests will be so wowed by this presentation. And look how the leaf just kind of puffed up. So that is such a pretty dessert. And with the almonds going around it, and then the cardamom sauce that I'm just going to drizzle all over the top. Is just going to be the perfect end. So never think, you know, we have all had breakfast for dinner. Always think about how great that will be. And as I always say on the VeryVera show, no matter what you do, do it in good taste. I hope you'll come back with me next week. And be sure to look out for your Southern Living magazine for April. They're doing an article on me. I can't wait for you to see it. And I hope you'll come back and join us next week.